Welcome to another artist interview from Peaks Island Radio. I'm Chris, pleased to be joined by Katie McNally of the Pine Tree Flyers. They're going to be out here for the Peaks Island House Concert Series on June 2nd from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at the Tiny Porch Stage, 726 Seashore Avenue, Peaks Island. Beautiful place to go and listen to some music and be in nature. Katie's very interesting. She spoke about the Pine Tree Flyers. It's a new venture that her and her musical friends, Neil Pearlman, Emily Troll, and Owen Marshall, collaborated on to bring New England music back to its roots. Trad music that draws on English tunes, music from Cape Breton, from Scotland, and a whole bunch of others blending into New England contradance music. It's a very interesting conversation, and I'm looking forward to the show. That's June 2nd, 6:30, part of the Tiny Porch House Concert Series. If you like this interview and you want to hear more, we've got a full archive at peaksislandradio.com where you can go and listen to past artist interviews and interviews of local islanders as well. Enjoy. So to start, how did Pine Tree Flyers come to be?
We're a pretty new band. We kind of started, there are kind of a few things that started the band. We, all of us are professional musicians and have spent the past decade or so touring and traveling and all over the world. And then when COVID hit, all of a sudden we were like stuck at home in Portland. And it was just like the perfect moment to kind of like dig into the local scene and play with, the people who are around. And it's fantastic having a band of people who are all within like a 10-minute drive of one another. I have other bandmates in Oregon and Nova Scotia and Wisconsin. And it's amazing to just like, pop over to someone's house for an hour and play some tunes and get on with your day. But the real kind of like nugget of where the band started was my partner, Neil Pearlman, has taught at Maine Fiddle Camp since he was a teenager, basically. And so has our other bandmate, Owen Marshall. And I went to Maine Fiddle Camp for the first time maybe 8 years ago with Neil. And Maine Fiddle Camp is kind of like an institution in the state of Maine. And it was the first time that I heard people playing like New England music in this like really, where I heard a lot of young people playing New England music and loving it and just like playing the heck out of it. And I grew up, I was born in New Hampshire and I grew up mostly in Massachusetts, and I played in a contradance band in Westford, Massachusetts called Au Contraire. And it was great. We played 2 contradances a month. I learned so many tunes and so much from the folks in that band. But it was this very like little local thing, and it just felt like sort of the thing I did every other Saturday night. And I didn't sort of realize that there was this like huge wide world out there of folks who like loved those tunes. And so I kind of came away from Maine Fiddle Camp thinking like, oh my gosh, we need to like New England music doesn't get outside of New England. And I wanted to make that happen in some way. So I kind of like furiously like journaled. I have like 5 or 6 or 7 pages of like my moleskin with like all these thoughts, which I never do. I'm like not a journaler. And it took a few years before I talked to Owen about it, and he was all about it. And we finally sort of all had the time when COVID hit and we were all at home to make it happen.
Let's talk a little bit about New England music before we move on to sort of the next steps of the band. What was it that you think that sort of initially captured you about the music? Was it the fact that it was danceable music, or was there some other element to it?
Yeah, definitely that it's dance music. I also think I grew up, playing for contradances twice a month, and also going into Boston and playing Scottish and Cape Breton music. Cape Breton is an island in Nova Scotia where there's a lot of traditional Scottish music played. And that was like, felt a lot like hipper and trendier to me than New England music is. And I mean, we all know that no fiddle music is hip or trendy, but comparatively, the Scottish scene in Boston was like young and hip. And I kind of like, it was sort of like these two worlds like didn't quite meet. And it wasn't until I went to main fiddle camp and I saw that like, this isn't just like this little thing that I do on the side. Um, that I kind of was like, wow, I need to be like proud of the music that is um, from here. And I think there's also like there's an element of being an American playing Scottish music or Irish music or whatever. Um, there's an element of like you really have to do your homework. There's an element of feeling like you have to prove yourself. And with New England music, all of a sudden I was just like, no, I can just play this. I don't have to prove myself to anyone. I grew up playing this. And so that kind of lit a fire under me to dig into that a little deeper.
You mentioned sort of playing it your whole life and playing when you were younger. When did you first get your start playing? Was it sort of like the traditional you're picking out an instrument at school thing, or was it something different?
Sorta, yeah. I picked up the violin in third grade when I was 8 years old. Um, and it was just sort of like, you know, classical violin. Um, and I took some private lessons too, and it wasn't really working for me, classical music. It wasn't a very nurturing environment that I ended up in, and I switched private teachers, and that teacher taught me some Irish tunes. His name was Joe Jewett, and he was just like so kind, such a great teacher, and was teaching me tunes that all of a sudden I like wanted to practice nonstop. So I took lessons. I started taking lessons with him when I was maybe 10 or 11. And then I joined the contradance band in my hometown when I was 12, 12 or 12, I think, and played with them like through high school. And, um, and yeah, that's kind of where I got my start. I went to this camp, at Boston College called Gaelic Roots. Um, and that's kind of where I heard Scottish and Cape Breton music for the first time, and that super captivated me. There was a fiddler named David Greenberg who was there teaching Cape Breton fiddle with Doug McPhee on piano, and that kind of like sent me in a whole other direction too.
Yeah, when you talk about that other direction, I recall from the beginning of our conversation that you had said that all of the band, the group, has traveled the world playing music. Was when you were doing that, was that um, like Gaelic or Celtic music, or what were you playing when you were touring?
Yeah, I mean, I up until now I've toured as a like Scottish and Cape Breton fiddle player. Um, and it's music I love. It's music I've studied a lot. Owen Marshall plays with the Seamus Egan Project, playing Irish music. Neil Perlman is like very heavily in the Scottish and Cape Breton music scene. His family, Ed Perlman and Laura Scott, are amazing proponents of that here in the States. And Emily Troll, who plays accordion, she plays like a lot of old time music and a lot of Quebecois music. So we're all kind of like taking these different influences, these different immigrant groups that have come to New England. And we've like studied all of those things um, really seriously while simultaneously all growing up playing for contradances.
That I find really fascinating. It's sort of like your group is a microcosm of the melting pot that is New England music because you all come at it from slightly different angles. How did that how did that sort of play out when you were deciding maybe what tunes to play and then how you were going to meld those sounds together?
I mean, it's like it's so natural. Like it even that makes sense that you're asking that, but it wasn't even much of a discussion, I don't think, because there's like this common repertoire of tunes that are, quote unquote New England tunes. And some of those are truly like written here from here. And then there are others that like this tune Petronella, which is, I always just thought of it as a classic New England dance tune, but actually, of course, it's like a much older Scottish tune. And there are a lot of like Irish jigs that are played that are just classic repertoire at this point. Um, so we're really digging in. We're choosing to dig into old classic repertoire. I think there are a lot of contradance bands out there right now that are doing really inventive things. There's like techno contra and like all this stuff going on that I think is wonderful. But we're digging into what is called like the New England chestnuts, which are just the old classic tunes, and putting a different spin on them, and moreover, sort of. Our goal is to play the music in like a concert setting or on a festival stage, because contradance music, New England music, has been relegated only to the dance floor, basically. And I don't think this music should ever be disentangled from the dance. That's a really important element of it that we don't want to stray too far from. But on the other hand, I feel like there's a place for New England music, alongside bluegrass music and Cajun music as like a deep American music, traditional music form that should be on festival stages.
Yeah, that's fascinating. So when do you think that break had happened, right? So the way that I understand it, and please correct me if I'm wrong, contradance music has been around for a very long time, since the earliest waves of European immigrants. And I imagine that means that it had been performed somewhat nonstop for a period of time. When did it become something that became more like a historical piece rather than something that was just, part of the everyday New England life?
That's a good question. I mean, I think a lot of what my generation is drawing from is like the revival of the 1970s. So like I think it was certainly like it was happening through the 30s and 40s, and then I think there was a lull for a few decades at least. And I mean, even now, there was a revival, but it's certainly not like not everyone in Maine like goes out to the country dance on Saturday night. But I think there's definitely more and more of an awareness of it these days, and that's certainly something that we strive to like help keep going.
Obviously, we appreciate you coming out to Peaks and bringing that music with you to the island. Where else? Where else are you touring, and where else are you trying to raise this awareness? Are you primarily focused on New England itself, or are you bringing this music outside of New England?
Well, it's a new band, so we just recorded our first album last month, and we're mixing it like next week. We're really hoping to bring it all over the United States and hopefully Europe as well. We are right after Peaks. We're headed up to Prince Edward Island in Canada to play at the Festival of Small Halls, and so far we've mostly been in the Northeast. We've played a lot of gigs in Maine. We played at Celtic Colors up in Cape Breton last fall, which was really fun. But I kind of want to break into like the Americana folk festival circuit. I feel like we have all these like Celtic Celtic booking contacts, all of us from our work, but I'm really hoping to get to say Louisiana, and like check out the like Acadian connection and stuff like that.
That's really neat. Yeah, I'm obviously, well, maybe not obviously, but I'm not a part of that world to the extent that I know like what it takes to make those connections. But I also think like a natural fit would be like even the folk music scene. Like Newport obviously has a very famous folk festival, and
Yeah.
other venues like that, where I think you would find people that are receptive to this kind of music that maybe just haven't heard it quite in this more pure form before. And I wonder if you have an experience of that either with friends that ask like, gee, what is it that you play? Or when you meet people like that, or what's the initial reaction when people are hearing your music for the first time?
Well, it's kind of funny. Like I do have like some great friends who are fantastic bluegrass musicians who, I mention, oh yeah, I have this new project. We play New England music, and they're like, what's New England music? And they like live in New England,
Hmm.
and so that's kind of crazy to me that other folk musicians don't even have a sense of what that is. Um, so so yeah, that's kind of interesting that happens sometimes.
Yeah, that's wild. So, for an islander who perhaps doesn't even have that sort of depth of knowledge of like the bluegrass and Americana scene, how would you describe what folks may be coming to see on the second?
Yeah. So we're gonna be playing. It's all dance music, like I said. Like it's very much connected to. It's all jigs and reels, um, all instrumental music, and a lot of it is like really driving, really peppy and fun. And we have a few like slower waltzes to kind of chill, kick back with.
That's great. And are all of the tunes that you're playing, I think you had said that you focus on traditional New England tunes that have been around for quite some time, but are they all tunes that existed already, or have you brought any original pieces as well?
We have a couple originals that we've mixed in. We've recorded two on our new album. It's mostly focusing on the old stuff. There's a waltz that I wrote and a jig that Owen wrote, and we kind of did that on purpose because we do want to pay homage to like what came before us and like ground ourselves deeply in the tradition, but also you know any music we want to stay relevant, I think, and keep traditional music relevant and growing and breathing. So yeah, we have a couple originals.
Great. And now, from an audience point of view, so we've talked about the history of contradances a little bit and where the music comes from. If an audience member wanted to really ground themselves in that sense of history as well, how do you think they should approach the concert?
Well, probably like honestly the best thing to do is to like go to a contradance if you can. There's a great new um, contradance in Portland, and it is called the Common Floor Contradance. They've just been going for a few months now, kind of since the pandemic, and they're right in town, right in Portland. And I think actually like feeling the music, feeling how you're supposed to move to it and dance to it is always like the first place with any of my fiddle students. I tell them, oh, you want to be a better fiddle player? Like, go dance. And like, if it's Cape Breton music, I'm like, learn the basic steps. That will help you play it better. And if you want to, like, have a deeper sense of what we're doing on stage, go to a contra dance and dance it and feel it.
So I think the contradances used to like basically be a big community event, and it used to be a form of like social glue in some way. Do you have that same goal for the performances that you do too to help sort of bring community together?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think that's what keeps us all in traditional music, um, in a sense. Like it really, I feel very lucky that I found traditional music at a young age, and I have this like deep community of people across New England, across the United States, across Europe. All of us have like a common thread and a common language. Um, and it's something that I think I've talked to Ellen about this a little bit, that it's something that kind of surpasses a lot of differences we have. If you get out on the dance floor and you dance with someone who doesn't share the same political beliefs as you or whatever, like you find some common ground, just like enjoying music, um, getting off your computer, and being together.
That's great. Yeah, we could all use some more of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you. Anything that you want to share about your project that I haven't asked about yet?
I guess just keep an eye on our website for the new album, And thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for participating, and thanks so much for bringing your music out to the island as well.
We can't wait.